कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी राधा तव कुंज विहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरावनचारी यमुना तीरावनचारी राधा माधव कुंज विहारी राधव कुंज विहारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय गौरानिताय गौरानिताय जय गौरानिताय जय गौरा जय जय प्रभुपाद जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य Ashtottara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Samstapakacharya Savior of the whole world Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Gaur. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 24, Matsya, the Lord's fish incarnation. Text number 47. Jano abudho ayam nija karma bandhanaha. Jano budhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Jano budhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Sukhechaya karma samihate asukham. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Yat sevaya tam vidhunoti asanmatim. Yat sevaya tam vidunotyasanmatim. Yat sevaya tam vidunotyasanmatim. Granthim sa bhindyad hrudayam sano guruho. Granthim sa bhindyad hrudayam sano guruho. Granthim sa bhindyad hrudayam sano guruho. Jano budhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Yat sevaya tam vidunotyasanmatim. Granthim sabhindyad hridayam sano guruho. Jano budhoyam nija karma bandhana. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Yat sevaya tam vidunotyasanmatim. Granthim sabhindyad hridayam sano guruho. Jano budhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Yat sevaya tam vidunotyasanmatim. Granthim sabhindyad hridayam sano guruho. Jano budhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Yatsevaya tam vidunotya sanmatim. Granthim sabhindyad hridayam sano guruhu. Jano buddhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Yatsevaya tam vidunotya sanmatim. Granthim sabhindyad hridayam sano guruhu. Jano buddhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Nijochaya karma samihate sukham. Yatsevaya tam vidunotya sanmatim. Granthim sabhindyad hridayam sano guruhu. Jano buddhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Yatsevaya tam vidunotya sanmatim. Granthim sabhindyad sano guruhu. Janaha. You want to try? Try. Jano buddhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Yatsevaya tam vidunotya sanmatim. Granthim sabhindyad hridayam sano guruhu. Jano buddhoyam nija karma bandhanaha. Sukhechaya karma samihate sukham. Vayatam vidunotya sanmatim. Granthim sabhindyad hridayam sano guruhu. Janaha, the conditioned soul, subjected to birth and death. Abudhaha, most foolish, because of accepting the body as the self. Ayam, he, nija karma bandhanaha, accepting different bodily forms as a result of his sinful activities. Sukha ichchaya, desiring to be happy within this material world. Karma, fruitive activities. Samihate, plans. Asukham, but it is for distress only. Yat sevaya, by rendering service unto whom? Tam, the entanglement of karma. Vidunoti, clears up. Asatmatim, the unclean mentality, accepting the body as a self. Granthim, hard knot. Saha, his lordship, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhindyat, being cut off. Hridayam, in the core of the heart. Saha, he, the Lord. Naha, our. Guruhu, the Supreme Spiritual Master. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. In hopes of becoming happy in this material world, the foolish conditioned soul performs fruitive activities that result only in suffering. But by rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes free from such false desires for happiness. May my Supreme Spiritual Master cut the knot of false desires from the core of my heart. Please repeat this translation. In hopes of becoming happy in this material world, the foolish conditioned soul performs fruitive activities that result only in suffering. But by rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes free from such false desires for happiness. May my Supreme Spiritual Master cut the knot of false desires from the core of my heart. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. For material happiness, the conditioned soul involves himself in fruitive activities which actually put him into material distress. Because the conditioned soul does not know this, he is said to be in avidya or ignorance. Because of a false hope for happiness, the conditioned soul becomes involved in various plans for material activity. Here, Maharaj Satyavrata prays that the Lord sever this hard knot of false happiness and thus become his supreme spiritual master. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namini. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastra Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare. So this is a verse spoken by Satyavrata, King Satyavrata. He is offering prayers to the Supreme Lord in the form of the fish. The Supreme Lord has appeared for the sake of doing a favor to this king. And it is one of the pastimes of the Lord. He has appeared at a time when there is inundation during the change of Manu, Manvantara. Manvantara has got two meanings. One is that the period of a Manu. Another meaning is change of Manu. In the 10 topics of the Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami describes Atra in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Atra Sarga Visargascha Sthanam Poshanam Utayaha Manvantareshanu Katha Nirodho Miktirashrayaha. There are 10 topics in the Bhagavatam. One of them is called Manvantara, the change of Manus. So the post of Manu is a very responsible post for guiding the human beings. So there is this book called Manu Smriti, sometimes also called Manu Samhita, that gives the directions for human beings, how they can lead a life following certain principles by which they are able to come out of the material entanglement in this world. So that post of Manu will be awarded to Satyavrata in the next Manvantara. But for now, the Lord is going to instruct this Satyavrata in knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, which is very, very rare. Even though the Vedas and all the Vedic literature, scriptures, contain knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, still the other topics will be described to such a large extent that knowledge about the Supreme Lord will be not so prominent in this, specifically in the original Vedas. To give you an idea, the original Vedas contain 99.999999% of the subject matter discussed there is Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas. Why? Why is it like that? That is because the Vedas give directions for the human being how he can fulfill his material desires in a pious way. So the Vedas contain directions for all categories of people having all kinds of desires. So since the desires are so many, varieties of desires, so the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas is very, very vast. Now, in that Karma Kanda section, there are so many people who study the Vedas, and they are described in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna himself in the 2nd chapter. Vedavadarata partha nanyadastiti vadinaha. They wrongly come to the conclusion by studying the Vedas, because they mostly will be going through the Karma Kanda portion. What is that verse? Kamatmana Swargapara. Before that, Yamimam Pushpitam Vacham Pravadanti Avipaschitaha. Pushpitam Vacham, all these flowery words of the Vedas. The flowery words are the Karma Kanda section, which promise so much of material enjoyment, varieties of material benefits, material gain, for performing, having performed some, followed some principles or some rituals or some yajna, dana, tapa, all kinds of sacrifice, charity and austerities or penance. So they are so much carried away by these performances, and these rituals have to be performed very much precisely, exacting rituals. Just like, for example, the mantra that is to be chanted when a sacrifice is offered, Karma Kanda sacrifice is offered. That mantra has to be chanted exactly the way the mantra is supposed to be chanted. So there will be Brahmanas who will be very, very much learned in chanting of these Vedic hymns, in offering sacrifices. So they become very, 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 very puffed up, because they got this special skill for chanting and producing the effects of this chanting in sometimes rejuvenating a dead animal. Animal sacrifice, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains, is actually meant for testing the efficacy of the mantra chanter in performing a sacrifice. So when the mantra chanter has to prove his competence, an animal will be killed, an old cow or bull, and it will be offered in sacrifice, and it will be revived by the chanting of the mantras accurately by the qualified Brahmana. So you can imagine, if there is a Brahmana who is expert in chanting such mantras and is able to revive a dead animal, he'll be so much regarded as very, very, respectable personality in the entire community, in the entire society, in the human society. So naturally, they will be carried away and they'll consider that as the end in itself. So Bhagavad Gita is so important that it points out that yamimam pushpitam vacham. All these type of statements in the original Vedas are the flowery words of the Vedas by which people are easily carried away. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipaschitaha. Those who are not really intelligent to understand the ultimate goal of the Vedas, they miss out the goal, and because they are not really intelligent, even though they have some skill in chanting mantras, in learning all the procedures, in directing the aspirants to achieve their material goals, but still they miss out the real essence of the entire Vedas. Pravadanti avipaschitaha Vedavadarata partha nanyadastiti vadinaha. Vedavadarata. They are all stuck up in this Karmakanda section. And the bulk of the Vedas is this Karmakanda section. So very few people will know what is the ultimate end of the Vedas. Very few people will know. They'll consider this Karmakanda section itself as an end in itself. That is the goal of the Vedas. How to live happily by strictly following the Vedic injunctions, acting piously, getting material gain, and at the most they will be having the goal of elevation to heavenly planets. And in the Vedas there are descriptions of so many devatas who are all having the power to administer these different benefits by accepting the sacrificial offerings on behalf of the Supreme Lord. So these devatas, so many of them are there, and they are mentioned in the Karma Kanda section. So, these foolish people, Abudaha, as is described here, Vedavadarata, they think that if they get the favor of the Devata, oh, that's a great achievement. If they're able to promote themselves to the heavenly planets. That also Krishna says, Kamatmana Swargapara, because they Kamatmanaha, they are so much filled with material desires for material enjoyment that ultimately they may consider the next life, I want to be promoted to the Swargaloka. Kamatmana Swargapara Janma Karma Phalapradam, resultant good birth in the heavenly planets. And Karma Phala is all their pious activities will be success. They'll be intoxicated with success. Kamatmana Swargapara Janma Karma Phalapradam Kriya Vishesha Bahulam Bhogaishwarya Gatim Prati Gatim. The ultimate goal is Bhoga and Aishwarya. Material enjoyment through material opulence. Achievement of so many different material gains. So this becomes their final goal in life. That's why Vyasadeva, after compiling the Vedas, he sat in meditation and saw particularly this people of Kali Yuga. They are so unfortunate that they are not necessarily very intelligent to decipher what is the goal of the Vedas. They'll miss out the goal mostly. And because of that, they'll become busy with Bhogaishwarya Gatim Prati. So Krishna very nicely summarizes what Vyasadeva has actually, what great work Vyasadeva has done. Krishna summarizes very nicely in the Bhagavad Gita. Vyasadeva has presented the Vedanta philosophy in order to correct this misunderstanding. So Krishna says, Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya aparhuta chetasam. Two categories of persons. One is those who are Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam, those who are attached to this Bhoga and Aishwarya, to material enjoyment through material opulence. And there is another class of people, Taya aparhuta chetasam. They are bewildered. They are bewildered by these descriptions in the Vedas and by even seeing the Brahmanas perform sacrifices, revive dead animals, and then they become very, very opulent. They are able to perform big sacrifices ostentatiously. If you study in the 17th chapter, sacrifice in the mode of passion, such people become very much passionate, rajasic. So they will do huge sacrifices, they'll spend a lot of money, and they'll make a show, so that actually misleads them. Taya apahruta chetasa. So some people may even get carried away by this show, or by the promise, or by the competence of the Brahmanas in chanting the mantras and reviving dead animals and chanting mantras so effectively that all the desires, the material desires, are fulfilled through this performance of sacrifice, that people become very, very rich. And as a result of all this, apahruta chetasam, even intelligent people may lose their discrimination power. Taya apahruta chetasam, mayaya apahruta jnana. Same thing. Taya apahruta chetasam, vyavasayatmika buddhis samadhau na vidhiyate. Their intelligence cannot be properly established for the real goal of the Vedas, that they will completely miss out. So therefore Vyasadeva, he collected the portions of the Vedas which are especially highlighting the real goal. Because we are not this body, we are spirit soul, and the spirit soul can never be happy with material opulence and material enjoyment. So therefore Vyasadeva collected this philosophical portion describing the real nature of the self and the achievement to be obtained by the cultivation of this knowledge, that one should actually aim for freedom from material bondage. One should understand one's true spiritual nature and become materially detached. So he collected all these portions and put them in the form of Upanishads. Upanishads give that Vedic wisdom to those who may be carried away by the flowery words of the Vedas. So Krishna has put that Vedic wisdom in the Bhagavad Gita by giving this warning: don't be carried away by the flowery words of the Vedas. So in this verse, King Satyavrata in his prayer to the Supreme Lord is telling, in hopes of becoming happy in this material world, the foolish conditioned soul performs fruitive activities. This karma kanda portion of the Vedas, only fruitive activities, that's all. Now why would Vyasadeva compile the Vedas and give this karma kanda section elaborately? Because human beings are never meant to fulfill their desires by sinful activities. And the tendency for sinful activity is always there in this material world. The general tendency is somehow secure some sense gratification. So such people, to save them from sinful ways of fulfilling their material desires or enjoying sense gratification, Vyasadeva has presented this Karma Kanda section. You see, it is required. Because majority of the people are fruitive mentality. Most people are like that. So at least if they refrain from sinful activities, sinful ways of enjoying material opulence, then at least they become pious. And Karma Kanda is supposed to lead them towards realizing that even through pious activities, I cannot be really happy by all these material gain, material opulence, material enjoyment. I cannot be happy. So how can I get real happiness that I am seeking? That inquiry will begin. And that is where Vedanta Sutra begins. Athato Brahma Jignasa. That Brahma Jignasa subject matter is already there in the Upanishads. So Vedanta Sutra, in a sense, is only summarizing the Upanishads. The essence of the Upanishads is further condensed in the Vedanta Sutra. So whether Vedanta Sutra or the Upanishads, they are meant for those who are really intelligent and who have realized that this material opulence and material enjoyment cannot make me really happy and satisfied. That is very, very rare. So, Srila Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye. Among human beings, thousands and thousands of them, you may rarely find one person, kaschid, some rare person who endeavors for siddhi. Siddhi means perfection of life. This perfection is described in the Vedanta, in the Upanishads. To realize the spiritual nature, aham brahmasmi, self-realization. So here perfection of a human being is actually meant, what is meant by perfection, siddhi, is self-realization. So this conclusion that is given here, the foolish conditioned soul performs fruitive activities that result only in suffering. Who can understand that whatever fruitive activities I am doing for getting some material happiness, instead I am getting only suffering? That is only an intelligent person who is able to properly see. Darshana, this philosophy has got a Sanskrit name, Darshana. Darshana means to be able to properly see the truth, the reality, especially of this performing pious activities for material happiness, resulting in material distress. To be able to see this, only they are candidates who are eligible for studying the Upanishads, for studying the Vedanta Sutra. They have realized that whatever fruitive activities one may perform, even though they consider themselves successful, such people are ultimately meeting with only material distress. And this also Krishna summarizes in the Bhagavad Gita. What is the defect and distress in this material world. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha dosha anudarshanam. Dosha is defect, dukkha is the distress. The defect and distress of this material existence, especially for those who are engaged in fruitive activities, is that these four fundamental miseries are always there. So, real success in human form of life is to overcome these distresses and these defects. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi. So, Krishna very nicely in the Bhagavad Gita, he has pointed out in just a few verses, he points out these important conclusions of all the work Vyasadeva has done. That's why in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, this Bhagavad Gita is the essence of Vedic wisdom. The Vedic wisdom is presented systematically by Vyasadeva, but to get that wisdom in very, very concise way, you simply have to study the Bhagavad Gita. So that is being mentioned here by Satyavrata. They're all great realized souls. So even in his prayers, actually the Bhagavatam, through the prayers offered by the devotees, all the wisdom of the Vedas is available. So actually, we should study all the different prayers very nicely. If we study the prayers, then the entire Vedic wisdom is available in the Bhagavatam. The highest truth is very nicely explained through the prayers offered by the devotees. On the one side, the nature of material existence is described very nicely in all these prayers, and the actual spiritual world, spiritual existence is also very nicely described. And finally, the benefit of studying the prayers is that one will come to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate absolute truth, the ultimate aspect of the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You will come to know about the Supreme Lord through these prayers. So, the first portion of this prayer, in hopes of becoming happy in this material world, the foolish conditioned soul performs fruitive activities that result only in suffering. It is describing the nature of this material existence and the reality that actually it results only in suffering. But by rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yat sevaya tam vidunoti asatmatim. This asatmati is the unclean mentality, accepting the body as self. It is completely destroyed simply by service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Devotional service to the Supreme Lord. And that's what Krishna says in the Buddhi Yoga section, 2nd chapter. He says this heart is cleansed. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana. Bahushakha hi anantascha buddhayo avyavasayina. So this vyavasayatmika buddhi is possible the proper discrimination in using intelligence for cleansing the heart of this misconception, body, accepting body as self. That is very easily possible by rendering service to the Supreme Personality of God. One becomes free from such false desires for happiness. Even the false desire for happiness in this material world is completely washed away. Because, again in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddhaha. One who is intelligent, he never tries to derive happiness out of sense contact with sense objects. No. Because that he understands as dukkha yoni, the source of so many distresses. Just like here it is said, they perform fruitive activities that result only in suffering. Why can't the people who are performing this karma kanda sacrifices, why can't they realize that whatever sacrifice I am doing for enjoying, I am only getting distress? Why can't they realize? What is the reason? Because karma kanda stresses that all your suffering is due to sinful activities. So you avoid sin, you only do pious activities, no suffering. This is not the complete picture. This is not the complete picture. While this is true, yes, our suffering is due to our sinful activities. But what constitutes sin is the million-dollar question. What do you call a sin? Bhagavad Gita, Krishna clarifies this. This verse, Prabhupada writes the purport. But for Prabhupada's purport, we'll miss out this point Krishna is pointing out. Krishna says there are three kinds of activities: karma, vikarma, akarma. So karma results in material, pious activities resulting in material enjoyment, material happiness. Vikarma results in suffering because it is sinful activity. And akarma is those, now we say devotional service, but actually Krishna's explanation on the superficial explanation is no reactions. The activities which have no reactions. So people will think, oh, those no reactions, not of interest to me. Akarma. That's for those people who are, renounce this world, for them that akarma is okay. For me, important is I should avoid vikarma and I should only engage in karma. You see? So they become busy with all these sacrifices, giving charity and performing vrata, penances. But all with the aim of getting some material gain, promotion to heavenly planets, material opulence, fulfillment of material desires. They are missing out that even karma is actually vikarma. How is karma also vikarma? By karma, one may be promoted to heavenly planets. But even in heavenly planets, there is material bondage, there is entanglement. The fundamental miseries are there everywhere. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi, dukkha, dosha, anudarshanam. Everywhere it is there. So that they miss out, completely miss out. And they regard devotees who are engaged in devotional service, they think that is also karma only. Bhakti is mistaken for karma. Bhakti is mistaken for karma. And this distinction between karma, vikarma and akarma, that's why Krishna says, kim karma kim akarmeti kavayo apyatra mohita. Even the most learned people in the Vedic scriptures, the experts in the Vedas, original Vedas, they also are unable to discriminate between what is karma and what is akarma. That's why Krishna says in the 18th verse of the 4th chapter, you have to study that verse very carefully. Karmanya karmaya pashed akarmani cha karmaya sabuddhiman manushyeshu sayukta kritsna karma krit. Even though engaged in all kinds of activities, a really intelligent person is able to properly understand the distinction between these three, karma, vikarma and akarma. And he is really free in this material world, never entangled, even though he may be engaged in all kinds of activities. He has no fear of any reaction, because he is engaged in devotional service. So that distinction between bhakti and karma, or the mistake of neglecting akarma, which Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 4th chapter, that is not realized by even the learned scholars in the Vedas. So, here Satyavrata is telling, simply by rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes free from such false desires for happiness. One is able to realize this false desire for happiness is simply because actually it is false, because it results in misery. There is no real happiness. All these fruitive activities. And by rendering service, one becomes engaged properly in akarma, in devotional service, which results in factual spiritual advancement, not progressing towards heavenly elevation. No, actually progressing on the path of self-realization. May my Supreme Spiritual Master cut the knot of false desires from the core of my heart. From the core of my heart may he cut. Because these desires for false happiness are completely very deep-rooted. Very deep-rooted. In the 5th chapter, there is a verse that says that these false desires, which are deep-rooted, cannot be cannot be uprooted by any process except devotional service. By any process except devotional service. Quoting from the Bhagavatam, in the purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada says that the Kumaras, when they are instructing Prithu Maharaj, Sanat Kumara, he says that these desires for material enjoyment within the core of the heart cannot be removed by any process other than devotional service. All other processes fail. So here, therefore, Satyavrata is praying to the Lord that you please cut the knot of false desires from the core of my heart. So, bhakti is the only process which can cleanse the heart to the core. Other processes, superficially, some effect may be seen, but the real cleansing of the heart, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, to what degree this Cheto Darpana Marjanam should happen? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very nicely summarizes this whole thing. The cleansing of the heart has to happen to the extent that Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam, the blazing fire of material existence has to be completely extinguished. Extinguished in such a way that it will never again get ignited. For that, what is he telling? Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. After this blazing fire of material existence is put out, all the material suffering is coming to an end. No more material miseries. No more material suffering. But then you should also experience the positive side of devotional service. The soothing rays of the benediction moon, which will bring a very, very cooling effect on the heart. That means, on one side, all the miseries are over. I got relief from all material miseries. But that is anyway experienced even in day-to-day experience, in daily affairs. When there is a misery, we want relief from the misery. So when we do get relief from the misery, we think that is real happiness. But that is not real happiness. That is just a neutral state where you get some relief from the misery. Neutral state. The real happiness is Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. So what does it translate to in our spiritual life? It means, on the one side, material desires which we were pursuing, we give up. We become freed from all material desires for enjoyment. And that's a big relief for a devotee. But he also begins to experience that his spiritual desires are fulfilled by the Lord. Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. All spiritual desires, one by one, now they are getting fulfilled. So this positive effect is required. Then there is no chance of igniting that blazing fire once again within the heart. That means we don't fall back after getting relief from some material miseries. We don't fall back into fruitive activities where again we will foolishly strive for some material enjoyment and become entangled and suffer material miseries once again. See, even the karmis, supposing they suffer a reversal in their life, it may sometimes appear like, oh, they have got some nice realization and they're really, becoming detached. But merely detaching oneself because of a bad experience is not positive proof of detachment. So in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, this positive proof of detachment is very nicely explained. Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktir anyatra syat. You have to have simultaneously in bhakti, the real progress in bhakti is confirmed when you have a transcendental experience in the absence of all kinds of material comforts and material enjoyment, everything. You have really developed virakti towards everything material, including material enjoyment or material comforts or material opulence. And you are able to experience positive, transcendental fulfillment of your spiritual desires. So, if I develop some kind of disgust at material objects of sense gratification, I should also develop attraction for Krishna. Both are required. Without that positive attraction towards Krishna, we cannot sustain detachment. Material detachment cannot be sustained. Cannot be sustained. So this is very, very important for devotees. Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. That spiritual desires are now getting fulfilled and we experience bliss, joy, happiness, positive spiritual pleasure we experience. Just like people, when they are in household life, they are trying very hard to chant very nicely, to do some nice reading, study of the Shastras, etc. But they are so much entangled. They are waiting for the day when they can retire and hand over responsibility to some grown-up son or whatever, and then become free from all these responsibilities in the family. And then they will think, oh, I can, after retirement, peacefully sit and study nicely and chant nicely and all that. But even in that householder life, if they are not cultivated the real spirit of engaging in all these activities, merely thinking that, oh, I'm not able to properly study or properly do japa because I've got so many responsibilities, I've got so many so much of I have so many duties to be performed, so it's not possible. So I'm just waiting when I'll become free from all these duties and responsibilities. But if one has not got the right spirit within the heart, that instead of just keeping on blaming, the blame game, that I'm not able to study because I got a lot of duties and responsibilities. But that's not the truth. Even the most busy person in family life or in professional life, he will definitely have some little time when he can free himself from immediately attending to some duty or responsibility and really completely absorb himself in some, at least a little time, in actually studying or chanting or worshipping Krishna. Just escaping, actually in doing this hard work of preparing the mind by not making excuse, that is not done, then it is very difficult. Of course, it can be done later also, but it is very difficult to do it later. It's like one person was telling me, one last example I'll give and close. When he was having this business, he was sitting in the shop, he was doing business, so no time for chanting. And then he was nearing retirement, so I told him that at least you chant one round. After retirement, you can chant 16 rounds. But now at least you chant 1 or 2 rounds. Telling no time, no time. Then one day he told me, I'm going to retire now. I'm going to hand over my business to my son. And my son will sit in the shop. I will have all the time to chant. Not only 16 rounds, I can even chant 64 rounds. So Swamiji, I will start chanting. The day I retire, I'll begin with 16 rounds and I will only increase. I said, very good. So then the retirement actually happened. He came to the temple. The day after retirement, he came. One particular day he came. So, Swamiji, now I am ready. I said, very good. So again I told him, he said, I'll chant 16 rounds. I said, no, begin with 1 round and gradually increase. I said, okay. And then after about 1 week, I met him and asked, so how is your chanting going on? Very difficult to chant. He says, somehow I'm not getting the mood for chanting. I have time, but man nahi lagta hai. So he kept on asking me, what shall I do for developing that mood for chanting? So then I explained to him that actually, even when you were working, when you were having the business, that time also you're making an excuse, I don't have time. You see? So it is not enough to just make an excuse and falsely blame something else. That's why the real desire to be cultivated, that spiritual desire in the heart to be cultivated, it happens to devotees also, full-time devotees also. Sometimes they become busy with doing some specific service where they'll be running around a lot, not finding time to sit peacefully and study or chant very nicely. Somehow they'll be chanting, doing reading, whatever. So they'll be thinking, when I become free from this service responsibility, when I become a little old, and there'll be younger devotees who will take this service responsibility, then I can sit and nicely study and nicely do japa. But when they actually are freed from the service, they just can't sit and read. Either their mind will be restless or they will feel very sleepy. One of the two. They can't sit and study. Even if you give them 3 hours, don't do anything. Just take prasadam and do some very little service, some other service, and then you sit and study. You can't sit and study. So, how do we develop this desire to actually properly engage in such serious study, serious chanting, serious worship, seriously offering prayers, feelingly, just like Kunti Devi, feelingly she is offering prayers. We are unable to offer feelingly prayers like Kunti Devi or Draupadi. She called out. Just one name is enough. When she was being disrobed, she just called out Krishna once, Govinda, over, finished. Immediately, Krishna responded. So, that is possible when we take the dust of the lotus feet of pure devotees on our head and completely surrender to them. Unless we are able to do that. And what does it mean? Of course, literally also you should do that. But more importantly, within the core of your heart, your innermost core of the heart, the deep feeling and desire, strong desire to actually surrender, to follow, to become a menial servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the spiritual master. In order to please the spiritual master, to do service, until that develops and you make it a point to do that. Until that time, there is no strong desire, or there is no attraction, or there is no inclination to actually engage properly in proper service. The first chapter of the Bhagavatam, second chapter, the first canto, Stoka Goswami declares, Dharma svanushtita pumsam vishwaksena katasu yaha na utpadayetya diratim shramayevahi keval. If you execute all your occupational duties very nicely, but do not develop taste for hearing the messages of Vasudeva, Krishna Katha, you don't develop taste for hearing Krishna Katha, then all your performance of occupational duties is a waste of time. It is wasted effort. So that's true for us also. In one sense, we can say, when we are running around doing some gross activity in the name of devotional service, that time we don't endeavor to develop this taste for hearing and chanting, then it is a big loss. It's a big loss for us. How will it develop when we become old, or when we are freed from some one type of service of running around and doing some gross thing? How will it develop? So that also he says, Stoka Goswami says, what is the way to develop this taste for hearing? Shushrusho Shraddadhanasya Vasudeva Katha Ruchi Syat. Vasudeva Katha Ruchi is developed by Shushrusho Shraddadhanasya. You have to become Shraddadhana. You have to become very, very faithful, very sincere. In doing what? Shushrusho. In rendering service to the pure devotees. Mahatsevaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevana. To serve the Mahatmas, the Punyatirthas, the pure devotees. Unreserved service. Prabhupada says, unreserved service, no reservation. Completely surrendered. That mood of surrender, service, simply, yes sir, I'll do whatever you say. That is the way to develop taste for hearing Vasudeva Katha. Developing ruchi, developing taste. That is the way. So, those who engage in service, menial service, right in the beginning, without thinking or making plans, oh, in future I will chant nicely, in future I will do this. No future. Now you try to chant nicely, hear nicely, read nicely. Even if that reading is just about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, doesn't matter. But you should do that reading very nicely. And you should develop that desire for developing the taste also. The desire is required. Then you can seek the blessings of the spiritual master, of the Vaishnavas, of the deities, and then you can develop that. Just like the Satyavrata, he is actually pure in the heart, but they always take a humble position. And he's telling, may my supreme spiritual master cut the knot of false desires from the core of my heart. Sano guruhu granthim sabhindyad hridayam sano guruhu. So similarly, we should also pray to our spiritual master, kindly cut the knot of false desires from the core of my heart. And spiritual master will do it. He is waiting to do that. He is just waiting for our surrender. He will definitely do it. So I'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.